So that's really crucial to see what's happening. And that is a very strategically wise move on multiple fronts, nationally and internationally. And also, Trump is portraying himself as a real leader of the people. So in an insurgency, in unconventional warfare, you establish a shadow government. That's what the deep state has done with Obama and Rice and Jarrett and the FBI and the CIA and all the SESs that Obama brought in, that parallels the open government, which is sometimes it's called, besides the shadow government, a double government. Depends on who you're researching here. But what is happening here is a counterinsurgency to that shadow government. And that is very crucial and very important to understand because he's showing himself to be very presidential and a leader, or in native terms, it would be a chief. And a chief is one who gives more than anyone else and speaks for everybody. That's really what a chief is. It's not a commander. It is somebody who gives more of themselves than everybody else and cares more for their welfare of their tribe and nation and band than everybody else. And again, Trump doesn't have to do any of this. Trump could just sit back, but he's not. He is out there showing concern. And of course, it's a national issue that there is no nation without borders. It's like the ridiculous statement that Obama made that I'm a citizen of the world. Well, look up the definition of citizen. You can't be. You have to be a citizen of something. So in the HMAC Declaration, we're saying citizen warriors. So that is very important to understand and very crucial, and it is good news. And the other thing is that the Rio Grande Valley, most of Texas is red, is Republican, is Grand Old Party, because it's the old party, not the more recent party of the Dems, of the Ku Klux Klan, of slavery, because that's the party of it. Republican Party was anti-slavery. That's what the Civil War was ultimately about. Started out to keep the Union together, but ended up about slavery. But there is a small section there that is Democratic, and there's a couple Republicans that are rhinos, but that is shifting. Why? Because the transnational drug cartels let loose by the Biden administration are just ravaging the border. And so the folks that live down there, just like on the Nogales border, and the McAllen border, Nogales, McAllen, and Eagle Pass are the big drug transport places and human trafficking. And when I say drug, you can replace it with slavery. If you want to get specific, it's chemical enslavement. And then human trafficking, you can say human slavery, you can say sex slavery, child slavery, or sex child slavery. All of that applies. And so that's really important to understand that Trump has done multiple tactical moves with the strategic visit to the border on a national level, on a leadership level, on an international level. And it is really crucial and good to see. And we're starting to see an alignment that could line up to something like a civil war. There's been a lot of people that said, oh, we're in a civil war. And I've said, no, we are not in a civil war. And it's not going to line up south to north, although with Florida and Texas, it looks a little bit like that. But again, this is fifth generational informational warfare. The terrain is not primarily physical. The terrain is primarily human. And therefore, it is more constitutional than that. So you don't fight the last war. You shouldn't fight the last war. Everybody always wants to fight the last war, the next war like the last war, but that's not really what's happening there. And so that is really important to understand, and good news. So just really wanted to start off with good news and important good news, and go back to the building collapse. I've had a lot of reports coming in about that the rebar was going up. If you're a bomb tech or you're an EOD guy, explosive ordnance disposal guy, you know, if it's falling, the rebar goes down. If it's exploding, the rebar goes up. Rebar's up. Flashes, there's some debate whether it's a direct energy weapon, or was some kind of an explosive as well. But again, this goes along with like the McAfee assassination, the suicide, and all this. When the left can't hold the physical, the human terrain, rather, they do their assassination attempts, and eventually, you run out of people. No civilization, for example, that focuses on the destruction of their young. And we are really well on our way from that, from the womb to the grave of enslavement and the way of death will survive. That's the great Mayan and Aztecan civilizations. Another movie you should watch is Apocalypto. They're just killing so many people as sacrifice. And really that's what's going on as well with a lot of the human sacrifice and child sacrifice that's happening as well. But remember the illegals at the border with Biden t-shirts, and remember they're all in uniform. They've got Biden flags, they're kneeling, they're saying Biden let us in. It's a very organized movement. Of course they don't care. It's just like Antifa.com goes to whitehouse.gov, and before Biden got in there, he went to Biden.com because that's his troops. So and that is who he is enslaving. So Biden's doing two things there. He's pimping and he's murking. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. And a long time ago, I talked about that, and I said that I used to be on the James T. Harris show as that guy from that thing, and I was talking about the border. And of course, I've spent a decade and more on the border, and I'm intimately familiar with it there. You know, I've got a different camera issue there. You probably can't see my I Love Me newspaper clippings today. But, you know, 4,000 pounds of marijuana, 2,000 pounds of cocaine, 10,000 pounds of marijuana. Those are all my pops back when I was a DEA agent. But the question becomes, why is Biden so vehement in leaving the border open? And why is Harris ignoring that if they are for the United States? And the answer is, of course, they are not. They are now being paid off and letting in the transnational drug cartels, which also really run people as well. So the dark economy of the deep state and the international deep state is drugs, people, and weapons. And so that's what's happening right now. So this is a new type of slavery. It's still slavery, though. But all of these children, there's record number of children coming in. So where are all these children going? Well, they were going into a San Diego holding center over there in Tijuana, and then they started putting them in hotels. So minor children without parents, besides being left out in the desert, besides being dropped over walls, are now being put into hotel rooms alone in a hotel. So for you parents out there, what kind of parent would do that? So this is really the pimping of these children, and a lot of them are being abused, and all we got to do is look at the way Biden fondles and sniffs kids all the time, or even leave the podium to go out. Hey, I like your barrettes, and you know they used to stroke my legs, my hair, the legs in the water. You know, if you're ever with somebody at a party with other adults, what would you do? I'd grab my kids. Hey, we're out of here. But this is now who is in the White House. And yes, I'm saying that. I'm certainly not saying Trump's in control, the military's in control. And if you're listening to the people who say that, you probably shouldn't be listening to me. But we will win. So where are all these kids going? Well, according to Tom Homan, former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, a lot of these kids are going to meatpacking factories, chicken farms, and yes, in the sex industry. And that's what is happening here, because there's a report out that they can't find truck drivers to move stuff. Well, why would they not have enough truck drivers? We can't understand it. It's just like the Dems say, we can't understand. CNN says we can't understand why we're losing Democrats in Texas. Well, you know, maybe it's because you're letting the transnational drug cartels rape the kids, rape the women, and rape the farms and ranches there, and it's not safe to be anywhere. So the one thing is part of the slavery, people, dark economy trade. But the other thing is a lot of MS-13 gangbangers and members are coming up. And these are serious hitters. These guys are like Al-Qaeda Al Peninsula, AQAP. They're like ISIS. They are bad guys. And I know I've arrested a lot of them back in the day. But a lot of these troop guys that are coming up are military age. And sometimes they're in uniform, like with the Biden T-shirt. So they're bringing up children and women to exploit as sex slaves, as meatpacking worker slaves, as field hands. But they're also bringing up troops to swell the ranks of Blantifa as well. And anybody who has any understanding of what's going on would be clearly aware of that. It's obvious. There is no tracking going around. So remember, we're not supposed to put the military on the border because of posse comitatus. That is, I'm not an attorney. I spent 1 year in law school before I came to my senses, but we're not talking about internal use of the military like the British quartering in our homes. We're talking about defending the borders. And JTF 6, Joint Task Force 6, used to do a lot of Border Patrol support as well. So could they do that? Certainly they could do that if they wanted to be effective. Right now they're gelding and training the military to a large extent, but could they do that? What they're doing instead is there's a whole amalgamation of agencies supposedly volunteering to come down to the border to work to take care of these kids. Well, that requires some kind of MOU, memorandum of understanding of what your duties are, but there's no transparency there at all. It's all opaque. It's really just pimping. And it's also really just murking. So that's what's happening. MS-13 Motto is kill, rob, rape, and control. And in the Portland, Sheeple, Democratic cities, that will fly. But as you try and move north into Texas, you're going to run into, Alamo traditional Texans. And as you run into northern Arizona, you're going to run into, Gun Central guys. Of course, the metrosexual coast, they're falling, and that's easy to do. But other than that, they're going to have a lot of trouble. That's why they move them at night on all of these things. So on buses and planes, and they fly around while we have to go through TSA, and little kids and old ladies are getting groped and searched. They're handing these guys money. And that is something I have said before that Team America can work on, is to take the 1028s, the license plates, follow the 1029s, see where they're going. That's happening up in Phoenix as well. That's not an accident that those houses are housing those illegals and those military age folks right next to Blantifa Hotel and up, because they're going to have to do something about the audit, which is proceeding excellently as well. And there are other dangers there, but those are being worked behind the scenes, because again, we did not lose the country kinetically, and we will not regain the country kinetically. And we didn't lose it overnight, and we will not regain it overnight. So it's complicated. It's not simple. I'm not a cheerleader. I'm telling you, as an intelligence officer, what the situation looks like to the best of my assessment, and as a leader, what I think we should be doing. But for those Team Americas, I'm also sorting some issues out between Team America folks. You've got to figure out your areas on the own and what the priorities are. But if you're anywhere near a place where the police have been gelded, then security is high on your list. It's just like when we're overseas and we would say, hey, there ain't no 911. What's the Black Hawk flight time, helicopter flight time to Gorgas Hospital in Panama? So that's really important to understand. But is that good news or bad news? That's good news, because Trump isn't just hiding in a hole in Florida. He's expanding out across Texas. I remember I also mentioned about Louisiana arresting some of the FBI pedos. And again, we see why the FBI pedos are in there, because they are being invited into this sin and crimes against children to get buy-in. That's what happens if you don't throw a stone. If you're not stoning the little girl and you stand there, then they're getting you to buy into it. That is infection by sin, which leads to infestation. That's what the Romans, when they're watching the Christians being martyred, they weren't the ones lighting them on fire, but they're in the audience. They're being infected. They are being groomed for that. And parents are actually now grooming their children in America with all these obscenities, where you have tranny trolls in public libraries at story time, and they're crawling on perverts and child molesters, and you're seeing guys with male members saying that they're female and in spas, and women are now freaking out because that's suddenly it's no longer intellectual. So suddenly abortion is no longer abortion. It is actually putting blades up into a woman's womb and cutting up a baby's head so it can be sucked out. That's a whole different story. Again, another film to watch there is Unplanned. I was at the Tucson premiere of that and had the Hands of Hope Elise on my show about that. And of course, I could still be an abortion under today's laws, but don't say abortion and don't say fetus. Say the murder of babies. Say it for what it is. Say babies, not fetus. Say murder of unborn babies as opposed to abortion. Do not let them control the dialogue, which they are doing more and more and more. So that's really important to understand. I want to make sure I hit that heavily, and want to also give credit to all of the Team America teams out there working real hard and coming to visit me, driving long distances. Almost every week I have somebody from out of state coming to visit me, and I will be visiting some teams on the ground shortly as well. So keep up the good work. Proud of you. You've got to work harder and stay on it.